Welcome to Conflict News 24. Today's bulletin includes news stories from France and China. France, where protests are intensifying. Could these demonstrations be a threat to Emmanuel Macron's government? How linked are these demonstrations to Russia-Ukraine conflict? Secondly, China, where video former president of China Hu Jintao is being shared. Hu Jintao attended CCP, China's Communist Party's Congress, which was held for around a week, concluded a few hours ago. And we know that Xi Jinping has been elected for another term as party's Secretary General. During the party meeting, Hu Jintao was escorted out of the venue, and speculations are being made by people about why he was pulled out of his chair and taken out of the venue. Firstly, was France, where protests are intensifying for around a week. Protests have been ongoing. The protests were started by labor unions, but now other sections of society are joining to civil society. Common French people are joining these demonstrations. Demonstrations were basically against inflation, against rising cost of living, against high rising food prices. But the protests are turning into anti-government protests and anti-NATO protests as well. France is supporting Ukraine in the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war. Openly supporting, obviously, like other European countries and US, all are supporting Ukraine. All have imposed sanctions on Russia. Though Macron visited Russia when this war broke out between Russia and Ukraine. I think it was March, February or March. The war started on the 24th of February. After that, we saw that Macron and German Chancellor Olaf Scholz visited Russia. And Macron has talked to Putin several times in the past, since the start of the Russia-Ukraine war. So France, other European countries backing Ukraine. Russia has cut off supply of gas to Europe. And because of Russia-Ukraine war, food prices are rising. Energy prices rising as well. And world is on the verge of economic recession. World was on the verge of economic recession, but Russia-Ukraine conflict has accelerated the movement toward this recession. And in some countries, recession has already started. This recession will lead to changes in Europe too. Liz Truss resigned 2 days ago. Olaf Scholz, German Chancellor, under severe pressure. Protests intensifying in Germany too. Germany was relying heavily on Russian gas for its industry, for its heating systems, for the people of Germany. And on daily basis was seeing protests in Germany against NATO, against German involvement in Russia-Ukraine conflict in support of Ukraine. Demonstrations in Italy as well, and demonstrations in France, where protests are turning into anti-government demonstrations. Around 2 years ago, we saw demonstrations in France, yellow vest demonstrations, which became a sort of threat for Emmanuel Macron's government. Once again, it seems that these ongoing demonstrations could be a threat to Emmanuel Macron's government. No signs of an end to Russia-Ukraine war in coming days. That is why the economic crisis, which is now being seen, which is surfacing in Europe, will deepen in coming days and weeks. How will the governments tackle this economic challenge? That remains to be seen. We have a clip for you showing people chanting slogans against NATO. So people are opposing the French involvement in Russia-Ukraine war. We have seen such sentiment in other parts of Europe as well, that on the one hand, EU countries are welcoming Ukrainians, but on the other hand, since people living in Europe are suffering the consequences of Europe's support for Ukraine, that is why people are protesting. They want their governments to isolate themselves from this war, which is not very likely, by the way. Watch a few clips from ongoing demonstrations by labor unions in France.
Ursula, tais-toi! Ursula, tais-toi! De l'OTAN! Sortons vite de l'OTAN! Sortons vite!
Secondly, was China. What happened at CCP's meeting? Chinese Communist Party held a congress, a week-long congress, at which Xi Jinping was elected for another term as party's Secretary General. Third term for Xi Jinping. And party's Secretary General serves as the president of the country too. China is one-party system, communist system, and Xi Jinping in power since 2012. He has served for 2 terms, but in 2018 he abolished the bar on a 3rd term. There was a constitutional restriction that no Chinese president would serve for more than 2 terms. But Xi Jinping removed that restriction in 2018, I think, and he wants to serve for the 3rd term as well. Party has elected him as the Secretary General in the week-long Congress held in Beijing, where party delegates, around 2,400, overwhelmingly supported Xi Jinping's election as party's Secretary General. On Sunday, he'll be officially declared as party's Secretary General, and then obviously as China's new president as well. Not new president, but his 3rd term will start. So for another 5 years, he'll be Chinese president. People say Xi Jinping is turning into a dictator, that he abolished a 3rd term ban. He is very strict, and he has launched crackdown on the politicians, on the party officials who opposed his policies. And during CCP's meeting, Hu Jintao, former president of China, was escorted out of the venue, which has led to several conflicting speculations. I have a video for you showing how Hu Jintao, former president of China, was pulled out of his chair and taken out of the venue of the Congress of CCP. Chinese state media says that Hu Jintao was not feeling well. That is why he was taken out of the venue, though he was not willing to leave the venue. But some others say that Hu Jintao opposed Xi Jinping's 3rd term. So he was expected to oppose Xi Jinping's election as party's Secretary General for the 3rd term. So that is why he was pulled out of his chair and taken out of the venue by force. China obviously not a democracy. We know that Human rights organizations have been saying that Uyghur Muslims in China are under repression. And there has been talk of sanctions on China at UN Human Rights Council sessions. But China obviously has global influence. That is why no sanctions could be imposed on China. China has not given access to any international human rights body to visit the areas where Uyghur Muslims are being kept in camps reportedly. And obviously, no opposition political parties are allowed to work freely in China. In a party's Congress, another important decision was made that now China has made its official policy that it will oppose Taiwan's independence. Though it's not something new, China has always been of this position, of this view that Taiwan is part of China, self-ruled island in the Pacific Ocean. It means that Xi Jinping will now make a move on Taiwan. In coming weeks or months, China could make a move on Taiwan to make it part of China. And an American Navy officer 2 days ago in an interview said that China could attack Taiwan this year, next year, or even this year as well. And he urged US Navy, US military to be fully prepared. Xi Jinping's election for the third term would mean that China would definitely step up efforts to make Taiwan part of China. Watch the clip showing how Hu Jintao, former president of China, seated next to Xi Jinping, was pulled out of his chair and escorted out of the venue where meeting of Chinese Communist Party was underway. The meeting came to a close today. Watch the clip.